We've just become accustomed to seeing a dollar bill and equating that to value, but that's a fairly recent concept. And so if you go back far enough, when people were transacting, that used to be based on gold, but then gold was not possible to bring places easily, especially when these people were traveling across very long distances on boats and different things. And so that's when they basically created this whole concept of value being attached to something that is paper or tangible. It's basically like an IOU. If you go back far enough to what money was, it was basically like, I'm good for this. And then the bank would basically say, this person is good for this. And so I'm going to go trade this note around. And that's me transacting in terms of money. And that's one thing I think is really important for people to grasp, is that money has always been fake. Like the concept of money is something that we've collectively created to try to push ourselves towards an outcome. And originally, when it was back to gold, that was something that was tangible. And of course, the concept made sense, but the practicality was not there. And then if you go down the line, we've just been further evolving the concept that was started there. And then the banks obviously created these IOU things where people could go around and transact and trade those IOU things around. That's how we get banks. That's how we get the central bank.
In 1933, FDR ended the domestic gold standard, prohibiting the private ownership of monetary gold, and stopped redeeming dollars for gold inside the United States. But on an international level, there was still a gold standard in place. Moving forward, we get to 1971. Other governments had deposited gold in the United States. I think France was the one that really was kind of like pressing the US about this. They were like, hey, we want our gold back because you guys are doing some funny business with your currency. The US was like, well, no. A lot of people mark this as technically a default that happened in the United States, where essentially we've said, hey, actually, no, you can't get your gold back. And so instead, we're just going to end the whole gold standard. We're just going to change the name of the game. And that was President Nixon in 71. And then a little bit later, we had in 1976, what was called the Jamaica Accord. And this was when it was actually made official in international law that we would end this global gold standard. This was done alongside with the IMF, and essentially countries came together and said, all right, we're going to kind of just have this floating currency rate system that is not backed by any particular commodity and no other good, and rather just based upon the full faith and credit of whatever government is actually issuing that currency.